What's the low-hanging fruit that's going to be plucked off right away?
I really don't understand if that's really any different.
What are some jobs let's go back to your background and what made you kind of dive in? I mean, there's going to be unemployment.
Do it now, right? This is where we start. The more humans are extracted, the more you need to do to stand out.
Okay, welcome everyone back to the Tech Jobber podcast. I'm Chris Schwenk, the Tech Jobber, and today I have a super exciting guest. He just got off stage last night at Epic Talks Miami.
Yep.
Shout out to Melissa Wagi.
Let's
Chris Pickerel, he is one of the leading experts in the country in AI. He's going to tell us all about his journey to get to this point, and he's going to tell us about tips on the job market, what jobs you should stay away from, what jobs you should target, and all that good stuff. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, man. I've been jazzed. No, we talked about this I think 2 months ago.
Yeah.
About doing this. So I'm glad it finally came to fruition. And last night was incredible. We had Jen on there and Chris and Jeff. They were all great. So it was a good crew last night that we had. But yeah, the AI world, this is 2024. It's the year of acceleration. I think a lot of people need to understand what that means. And I know today we're really focused on the job market and that type of stuff, but I mean, yeah, happy to be here, bro.
Yeah, so let's go into it because I first saw him speak in September and at Epic Talks, and then he spoke last night. And there's already been, in that short amount of time, there's already been a ton of changes. He's updating his presentation kind of in real time.
Yeah.
But let's go back to your background and what made you kind of dive into this field?
Oh, and besides the fear and necessity of AI, right? But going back to the beginning, right? It would be I was in originally the business development and finance world. So I had done some stuff for a company called Invitation Homes, and it was kind of my first purview into the financial system and how that works. And I thought, I think something more moral would be going to Hollywood and doing advertising. And I don't know why that was the idea, but that's what I ended up doing. Wow. And I worked for a couple of different agencies out there, Cashmere. They work with Snoop Dogg, Adidas, Red Bull, a lot of really big, CPG brands. And then I moved over to digital marketing because I knew data was the future.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew I needed to be close to the data, and that was going to drive every strategy in any world going forward. I built a really great reputation in the digital marketing space, worked with a lot of enterprise clients that have $1 million a month plus ad spends, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then, I was at the top of my game there as a business executive. I got burnt out, and I had the things, but not the things that mattered. And I took a road trip across the country. And that actually, in a way, opened my eyes up to what AI can do and what these technologies can do at scale. Because I did it during the pandemic, and I traveled the whole country in 2020 for about 10 months or so.
Okay. And how? I mean, what were some of the insights?
Oh man, every 300 miles, the culture changed, and the headlines changed, and the sentiment changed, and what people were getting on social media changed. Right? There's all these little walled gardens, these little bubbles that people were in. And we manipulated that obviously with data and advertising, right? That was our job. It's like how do we turn $1 into 5, right? But we were doing it by taking and scraping that data, and then to see the social impact that technology has beyond the advertising, right? That was the first entry point for me to have my eyes really open to what these advanced AI technologies can do. The next part is I met some developers on the road trip. And I actually got some perfume to large language models, I think, before everybody else did.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the community. And as soon as I saw the NLP, I was like, this is game over. Because I'm a strategist. And I'm like, if that's able to pull that data out and be able to do that. And it was slow at that point, really, really slow. And the parameters weren't as big. But I knew that the world that I was in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you met these developers. You said, "Wow, I had no idea this was even existing." And then
no clue.
what happens then? You start playing with ChatGPT? I mean, like...
Yeah, well, I continued the road trip, but every day I was watching a YouTube video on topics at that time I didn't understand, right? Because I'm business development and market insights, right? AI was not my thing.
Yeah.
I taught myself Python and R. I was like, well, if I don't know how to talk to computers, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I did that. And that still matters now, even though software engineers are like, my job's over.
Yeah.
You still need to understand. It's like, you've got to be able to talk to the computer on their terms to give the best outputs possible, right? And I knew that's what you had to do. I continued the trip, finished it up, and then it was just balls to the wall. It was like, if this is not the opportunity of a lifetime, but this is the most impactful thing that's probably ever happened to humanity. And it was one of those things where you knew this was beyond hype. This was, and I know a lot of people at this point have said this, but it was that impact was so apparent to me when I started playing with this stuff, which was that this is fire, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we had a bunch of speakers last night. Some people say this is the biggest thing since the internet. Some people say this is the biggest thing since the invention of fire.
Yeah,
You're on that level.
I'm on that level. The biggest thing you look at is that if something is not just smarter, right, than us, right, which will occur. It's an inevitability, right? And we're slowly approaching that inflection point where we can't see beyond the veil. That's that singularity, right?
Yeah.
It is fire because it changes the very fabric of society. Like we can get into this concept of talking about neo-feudalism or capitalism, really reaching this post-capitalistic point. And I'm a capitalist, right? And I look at how does AI affect labor, which is like full circle to what the conversation we're having here, right? Which is what do people do?
Yeah.
Right? If the AI can do it faster, better, right? And it can get it done with more precision and it doesn't get tired and everything else, right? If you own the company, that's a dream, right?
Yeah.
Which tells you that in and of itself is the hint of what you need to be doing. You need to be putting yourself in the mindset of the owner's box for a job.
Yeah.
You need to own a process completely, and you need to figure out how to automate that process completely.
So we'll just get into the jobs right now, because I have a lot of questions, just general questions about AI as well. But what's the low-hanging fruit that's going to be plucked off right away? I mean, some people say copywriters.
This is the interesting part. Well, this is the interesting part about that is because when I saw it, I was like, copywriters gone, strategists gone, right? But the adoption rate is slow on the consumer side. And it's a mixture, I think, of fear, right? I think it's a mixture of you've got your head in the sand and you're like, I just don't want to know. Like, don't even tell me. I think there's a fear of change management, right? Where people don't want to implement that because they don't want to put one, bit of water into it and have the dam break. Right. I think that's a big thing. But I see that the jobs that are going to be eliminated first are, surprisingly enough, for the creative and I would say the high-level knowledge worker jobs are going to be highly impacted. I think
go ahead. High-level knowledge. What do you mean?
That would be like, accounting, right? Imagine this thing can do accounting. Once they figure out mathematics, accounting's highly impacted, right? Everybody has to become a little mini CFO if they want to be relevant. Right. They have to have that level of vernacular.
So you can just kind of like input all the tax laws and then input your accounts and just boom, and you get the best
you
outcome,
talk about
basically.
lawyers. Lawyers are the same thing. Like, something that I probably would have charged, would have gotten charged $1,000 for legal consultation, right? I was able to input and scrape all this data about Florida law. Yeah. Because I've established my company here and then this is going to be home, right? So, and I was like, well, I don't understand the laws out here. Took all the data around it and I was like, okay, structure a proper, operating agreement for me. Wrote the whole thing. That would have cost me $1,000 to have a lawyer do that. Yeah. Right. You talk about accounting. I go, I've parsed data for companies in a private foundational model, and I'm able, not even somebody that's a certified, CFO or not CFO or anything like that, right? But I've got financial capabilities up here, but the model did all the work for me. Yeah. I was able to go, oh, well, the evaluation should be around here. And then I was able to go, this company should probably raise about this much money. And this is what their burn rate would look like. And this is their SG&A. And here's all of their cost of goods sold and all of that stuff. And AI was able to get within a 10th or 15th percentile of really, really great accuracy. Wow. Which, again, that early in this is a huge deal. And so for people that are looking for work, you need to learn not just the tools, right, but you really need to be thinking about what are the skill sets and the processes that I need to master to really understand AI. When a lot of people online, they talk about, well, just use this tool and in 3 easy steps you get that. But that's the entry point, right? The introduction, right, is the tool. But the path to mastery is understanding the way that AI works.
Yeah. Well, and on that point, going back to what you said about creatives, the thing I've always, you'll see online, AI produced this Drake song or this Monet painting or something, but they needed Drake to exist first to produce a sample Drake song, right? So when are we gonna get to the point where they can just create like Drake if he didn't exist? Like,
well, they got some of that now, right? You're talking about genuine inspiration.
Yeah,
that's AGI.
Okay,
right.
So right now it's like trash when you're like, oh, do a painting and it's just that, right?
It depends, right?
Okay.
It depends on who's holding the brush, right? Okay. In a sense, right? It does require some creativity, and then I think the people that are at the forefront of these types of things are always trying to find where's the limit for the model. And people don't really understand when you're doing that, you're actually doing a huge favor for these tech companies, right?
Yeah.
Because you're allowing those people that are on that 10 percentile of usage, they get them, okay, this is now version 5, and that person has pushed it as far as it can go.
Yeah.
For like ChatGPT, oh, well, they can't be pushed on these types of questions, right? And there's a lot of policing around OpenAI and that type of stuff and what questions you can ask. But I guess clarification on that would be like, I guess maybe clarify that a little bit for me, what you're wanting out of that, if you could.
Yeah,
there's a lot of places I could take that.
Yeah, I mean, are we close to that point where, or is it just if humans find out this was created by AI, if we didn't know Kanye existed and said, oh, here's this AI created artist called Kanye West and here's a song.
I mean, they've already got versions of
like,
that. They got versions of that now, right? I mean, like the OnlyFans girls are in trouble, right? We saw that going on. The other part of it is in the music industry, which, I'm a strategic advisor for a company called Culture Jam. Work with the biggest athletes and the biggest artists in the world. Like you're talking NBA All-Stars, right? Kawhi Leonard is actually one of the big ones we're working with and have worked with. We had a huge album come out with that. We've got 2 more albums coming out this year with that. And name and likeness and brand are still key components of this. So they haven't been replaced yet.
Yeah.
But you go across the world, right? You go to Japan, they've got virtual artists. And it's completely digital artist on stage. ABBA, right? That old band ABBA. I saw some article about ABBA and that they had generated over like $100 million on their tour with digital avatars of themselves when they were in their prime.
Wow.
And they're not even on tour. It's digital avatars themselves. And
so they're touring and it's like a hologram?
It's like a hologram. It's like people, it's like performers with their faces digitally imposed over their faces. I think that's what that was. But
and that was part of the actors' strike
no, totally separate from that. I mean, like the actors' strike is a cry for help, right? I think that you can't legislate your way out of the future.
Right.
You want to unionize and you want to stop it from happening. It's terrifying, but it's like the music industry, right? The music industry used to be about distribution through certain channels, right? And you need actors, right? And you need actors to do things a certain way, or you need writers to write. If AI is able to take the context of an entire industry, right? And this is something I've done, where you can write stories, or you can write movies. I can go combine these 3 concepts together, pull out all these things, right?
What did you use just out of?
A mixture, Claude, GPT-4, and Claude's a great copywriter, but I feel like 2.1 is not as good as 2.0. For some, I just haven't had enough time to play with it. But ChatGPT, again, I can get a lot out of that just because I know how to prompt engineer.
Yeah,
there's a lot of these tools that are out there. They're just OpenAI wrappers, right? Yeah. They're a really great interface to interact with the technology to get an output. Yeah. It makes it a lot simpler to get those outputs. You're still using GPT, right? But you're using GPT with either a foundational model and GPT, or you're just using a wrapper interface, and then they're making money off of that.
So going back to the prompt engineers, I kind of saw in the job market, obviously ChatGPT exploded at the beginning of this year. I saw some prompt engineering jobs, and now I've kind of seen them go away.
Yeah.
Do you think that's not going to be a thing that people should focus on?
It's going to be like, hey, I had a Microsoft Word consultant, right? You know, I think that's going to be, why do you not know how to prompt engineer? I think that's going to be like a basic skill.
Yeah.
How do you not know how to use Excel and PowerPoint? You know, that's why it still shocks me when I saw some stat that it's still less. We're still in like not even early majority. We're still in the innovation stage of this.
Yeah.
And the adoption rate is still not there, right? When people are still assuming that this is hype.
Right.
And they're like, this is just like the NFT and Bitcoin thing.
Right.
And it's not. And even then, you talk about Bitcoin, the nature of money is changing. Like BlackRock just made an ETF for this. So I think people are grossly underestimating how much this is going to impact them. But the best thing that I could tell people is that 2024 is the year of adoption. And I just got off some calls right before when we got in here, talking about enterprise level companies, and they're finally adopting this stuff, and they're creating their own language models, and they're thinking about how to innovate with AI. I'm talking to consulting firms. I've had the big four consulting firms approach me, right, and talk about maybe bringing me into the fold, and they know the jig is up, right? Yeah. The barrier to entry is on data is over. Data is democratized, and what that means to everybody out there is that you have the ability to become a world-class strategist in 1/10 the time. If you just understand how to use the tools, the insights that you can provide your company, the insights that you can use to direct your life, the insights that you can use from this to actually find a job that's best suited for you, which we'll talk about growing markets and stuff. You can use these tools to pinpoint who you are.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, I used AI to scrape, download my personality, and break it apart into 1,000 pieces, put it all back together and go, this is my brand, right?
How did you go about that?
So there's a tool called Crystal, right? And this is actually really giving away some sauce with this, right?
Yeah.
So Crystal, you can actually go through and take a disc profile. Now, I had all this other data on Myers-Briggs and the Young philosophy and all these different personality tests that I had taken over the years, compiled all that data, and then I was able to, again, I've got scripts and I've got code that I've done to break this stuff apart. But then I was able to basically put a whole profile of myself together. I call it codified.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you can extract really deep insights. Like, there's even stuff where you can kind of estimate trauma in people. Just by scraping that data. Like, these likelihood traumas are what cause these personality traits.
From those tests?
Yes.
So you basically go reverse engineer and say, probably had a bad childhood.
I can put you in a chat bot, and it can estimate the likelihood by percentage of things that happened to you as a kid that causes things to happen. But that's because they've got this entire data set of all these things from the internet. You're talking to the internet. That's what a lot of people, I think, don't quite understand, right? The internet is the collective knowledge of humanity. And you have, before with the internet, you had the access to it. You can go get it instead of going to the library, right? And now what this is, that's why this is more like fire, is that you have the ability to have it in the format of which is best suited for you at any time. Like, you can say, I'm not an expert in this, right? Break this down to a more granular level. Yeah. Like, if I'm a CTO, talk to me like I'm a chief data officer, or chief technical officer. If I'm a specialist at a company, let's say I'm a copywriter at a marketing agency, and you're trying to understand a concept, you say, I'm a copywriter at a marketing agency, and we do A, B, and C, and this is my job, and this is how I do my job, and these are my tasks. Can you explain this concept in a way that can help me understand? Yeah. GPT will go, oh yeah, well, here's an analogy that would make a lot of sense to you, and here's another one, and another one, and another one. And so what would have taken you probably a month to really synthesize and process how that can apply to you, you get that instantly with AI.
How did they, what is the mechanism of how that works? Like, when I say, explain a data engineer to a third grader, like, how is it able to kind of break down, these are the concepts of a quote-unquote and here's a CIO level explanation. How does it do that? Exactly.
That's a lot of data science stuff, but like to make it simple, like you've got like these language models like Llama and Palm, right? And then you've got ones that you interact with like OpenAI on the regular and Claude, which are again the big ones that are out right now. And Bard, is really great at math, but the way that it works is you have these set of parameters. It's like a brain. So you have all these nodes and clusters of information, and what they do is that they've built out these language models and these what are called neural networks. And this deep learning capability that these neural networks have, they see the correlations and patterns through all this data, and then they're able to predict what would come after that. So that's why there's this argument at the high level of like, is this actually artificial intelligence, or is this just really good predictive modeling? Because all it's doing is predicting the next word.
Right.
Right, that would make sense. Like AI doesn't understand language, but it understands that this is the word that you should probably use based off of the words that I was provided.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they go, okay, so that happens, and then they go, okay, here's the output, and then it takes the context of all that output that you've interacted with, and then it kicks out the next thing. But I always have this argument, I'm like, but what's the difference between that and 99% of humanity? Like, we do the same thing. We have programs and inputs. We have models of things that we were programmed on, and this is how we perform things, right? Which is that 0 to 3 years old window, right? And a lot of that dictates your life. And then you have these other windows of life that are core elements to your language model, right? Your brain. And then you have outputs that you get through this vehicle. I really don't understand if that's really any different than who we are.
Yeah, it's really not, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's get into jobs. Let's hear it. I mean, what do they avoid? What are some jobs to look at? What are some skill sets to make sure people have? A lot of young people that I deal with on a daily basis, and they're asking me, what do I do? So let's hear it from you.
Don't wait. Do it now, right? This is where we start. Cross-pollinate. Understand that you should double down on the vertical that you're great at, but you need to start generating new ideas. You need to be able to look at the world in a lateral way. This is kind of the way that I look at it, is that you need to see the correlations between things, right? And then be able to create things that are new, right? And you need to instruct AI on how to do that. The ability to innovate at an instant is the best strategic advantage humanity's ever had, right? I don't think that it's the genius of some of these scientists that they created. I think it was like 100 new protein 3D models with this new thing that came out in November, right? Brilliant people, but AI did the work that would have taken probably 20 to 100 years to do, I think is what they were estimating on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Just by inputting the data that they had.
Yes, but the thing is they were scientists and they knew how to guide the model to the answer, right? So if you're an expert to something, you need to learn how to guide the model to give you the answer.
Right.
And you can actually, if you're great at what you do, you can discern whether or not that answer was accurate or not.
Right.
So when we talk about jobs of the future, I think that's a big part of your skill set. You need to be able to provide insight, and you need to be able to do it quickly, and then you need to have the mental toolbox to know these are the things I need to do to implement this now. Because if you're able to provide a company the ability to implement quickly, ideate quickly, and scale quickly, you are a very valuable, high-paid asset.
Yeah.
Right. There are industries that will shrink. If you're in customer service, be prepared. Right. And everybody knew that. Right. That's not like shocking to me. I think that when we look at the creator world, and there's an infinite appetite for content consumption. That seems to be. I'm sure there's a cap, right? But we certainly haven't reached that yet, which is still, I think, a little concerning to me. We haven't reached that cap yet from a societal perspective. But when it comes to that, you have to be able to create content and scale. If you're a creator, my God, use this now. Like every vision, like I write and produce music. I've always done that my entire life. I read and I write. I've got books that I've been stirring on and putting together for a long time. And AI has allowed me to accelerate this process in a way that, and I believe it's improved what I'm able to do because I can stay in flow. So if you're a creative person, use the tools, right? And then go beyond the tools and understand how to integrate it into your workflow. Yeah. And then figure out how to make those tools inspiring to you. Have those be the drafts. Like you can get that first draft out, and then you can go, this is not quite my vision.
Yeah.
Okay, my vision's more like this. Great, and then you go take AI down that rabbit hole.
And by being able to kind of extract.
You're getting these little jewels of things that you're like, oh yeah, that's what I was looking for, right?
Yeah.
I saw that in my mind's eye, right? I would say if you are a data person, you need to be learning. At that point, you have to become either a data scientist or data engineer. These are things that are really important. For me, I'm really doubling down on predictive modeling. I've got a knack for it. I think algorithm development's a really big thing too if you want to get really high level into it.
You mentioned Python and R.
Yeah, those are basics, right?
You need to have that.
Yeah, got to have that. I would advise, I mean, really almost anybody to do that. And I know that sounds so general, and they're like, oh man, anybody? I'm like, look, like once you get Python down, there's so many things with AI you're able to do. Like you've got auto GPTs where you've got these autonomous agents that can all talk to each other, and you know, it opens up a whole other level of networking with people that are doing incredible things. Like I've talked to people that have made Jarvis systems that they can talk to, and then they have all these autonomous agents that do the things for them, and they just tell them to do it.
And that's all via Python?
Yes, Python, and there's a couple of other things with that as well, right? But you can get pretty close into that process with just the ability to do Python. And R helps, and there's other coding languages that you probably need for some of that stuff. But like the fact that you're able to build that right now, and it's one man that did it in his room by himself, just built this out. Like we haven't reached the stretching of what that tech can do. So being a software engineer is not dead. I think these things just start becoming requirements to be well paid in the world. You've got to understand how to interact with data. If you are in the hands and labor world, right? Understand how to read a spreadsheet. Understand how to read the data of inventory. Understand how, again, it's all about interacting and molding data.
Yeah.
Figure out how to become really useful at predicting what things need to be built. Right? And they're like, well, I don't want to do that part. I'm like, all right, well, you need to get really good at designing concepts then, or you need to get really good at people skills, because there will be people still to be managed, but eventually you'll be managing robots and people. Right. That's the one thing that I think a lot of people in the labor market don't understand. And I had an old friend of mine from high school. I hadn't talked to him in probably 20 years. And he messaged me. He's like, hey, bro, I see you talking about AI. Like, I'm in the HVAC world. Like, what's going to happen? I've got 3 kids, right? Yeah. Got on a call, and I was like, look, you know, it's not Terminator yet. Right. And I don't even really think Terminator is a possibility at this moment. I want
to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll get into that. That'll be a fun one. We'll get into
the doomsday potential.
That'll be a deep conversation. You know, but it was like, look, you know, they're going to redesign these systems and these buildings to accommodate artificial intelligence and robotics. Like, that's what happens. New technology gets built. We don't use the same outlet plugs and the same electrical systems as we did in the 20s, right? And so they're like, oh, well, you can't do these things the way that they're built because AI can't get to these places. I was like, so they're going to invent a new way of doing it that allows AI to do that, and then they'll lower the maintenance and have the upkeep, and it'll be more efficient, blah, 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 right? So this impacts the way that things actually get made. You know, so the impact will be there, but it'll be over 20 years. I think the expanding sectors, if you really want to look at where to get jobs, it's healthcare. You know, I think the mental health space is definitely going to, I think, expand. Sure. The level of stress that people will be under as these changes happen will be existential and financially related. You know, as much as that sounds a little dark, it's true, right? I view the contracting markets, if you're in retail, I think disposable income is going to shrink a little bit. And also the available jobs that are in that space, they're going to shrink a little bit, just because the nature of disposable income is going to contract while we transition through this stuff. And then transport.
Luxury brands still good?
Well, if you're at the top of the mountain and you've got capital allocation, I don't think you have to worry about money. This thing really benefits the ultra wealthy in a massive way, right? I no longer have a barrier to entry to growth, which has been the human. Right. What's it, Henry Ford?
Labor costs.
Yeah, it's like Henry Ford, you know, talked about that. It was just like, you know, I would be making a lot more money if it wasn't for people, right? And that's... You take that attitude and then you give the ability to eliminate that process. I mean, there's a lot of money to be had in scaling your your company with AI and having the ability to implement that before everyone else.
Yeah.
And so the people that don't have access to these tools financially because they don't make enough, they're the ones that are going to get impacted. That's on the economic scale. But there's plenty of ways to still get access through YouTube. There are so many incredible creators that are doing really great work. And I really view what they're doing as an act of service to humanity by making those channels.
Who are some of those people that you
AI
you
Jason,
follow?
oh my God, the AI Jason's one of my favorites, man. That guy gave me my first intro into autonomous agents. Really big fan of that stuff. If you want to get into the nitty gritty technical pieces of it, I would really dive into that.
Yeah,
it's a really good one. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there. I've got a list and stuff I'll have for your audience if they want to go through that. I have like 100 channels or stuff of like AI. I just kind of roll through. Yeah, and I'll categorize them for them, and they can go check that out. And then you don't need to go get a degree from a 4-year university about that. Yeah, like computation or computer science. It matters, right? If you want to be at the science forefront of this stuff and you want to get your master's and PhD, you got to know the stuff at a deep level. But to use it, you don't need a bachelor's degree. Right. This is the other part. It's like 40% of companies are eliminating the requirement for bachelor's. You know why? Because the internet has the education system online for free, right? Yeah. And then you have the best teacher in the world for $20 a month in ChatGPT 4 that can take the entire lesson and contextualize it and tell you how to learn it. We're from 2,500 to like the MIT X Pro stuff, which is like 5 to 10,000. Yeah, for that. Those are investments.
Still a lot less than even a semester.
It's crazy, and you're getting it from MIT, and you're getting it from professors that are actually teaching at MIT, right? So, and there's a little bit of branding I think that comes with that as well. Sure. You're in the recruiting space, right? That provides a trust factor, right? Yeah. It's a signal, but I would say that doing that has opened up a ton of doors for me. And it's also on top of that given me some real scientific insights that was beneficial to some really great people I met in the technology and engineering end of this and the science end of this. Yeah. Because I was able to meet them at their level after taking those certifications and really get into that.
So let me ask you what maybe the future of like software engineering. So will a company have, I don't think we're that close to them fully outsourcing to AI all the code, right? No. So there's going to at least be some people that have the coding skills that are just looking over everything and prompting, and it'll kind of be a weapon for them, correct?
Yeah, it's definitely a tool in their toolbox. And I've got a range of people of examples I can give for this. So let's take the venture capital world, which has historically been a huge growth sector for people in this. Sure. Well, I talk to venture capitalists and I talk to people in the private equity space. They're like, AI is wonderful. You know why? Because instead of a $5 million burn rate, I give a company $500,000 and they're able to give me the same MVP. Wow. Right? And so that's a huge impact on the requirements of software engineers. That's why there's so much impact on that, right? And that's happened. That's gonna. I mean, Google just laid off a bunch of people. Yeah. And that's a Manta company. That's a huge indicator of what this technology's impact already is. There's also market contraction to that, but I think it's more than that. And these companies
definitely is.
They don't get affected by market contraction. They've got too much money for that. They're always looking at the future. They have a bottom line, right? But they're always looking to the future and they're adapting their company for that. If you look at, I've got a guy that owns, I've known for a long time. He owns a IT company. Does security, Azure cloud-based, very well respected in this space, works with Azure, right? Has a partnership with Microsoft, does stuff for the government. It actually helped with their CalPERS program when they moved from an old system to Azure. A lot of respect in that space. And when GPT 3.5 came out, I called him the next day and I was like, the jig's up for you, man. I'm like, we have to. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, there's no way it can't do these complex things. And then I busted it out and I researched his entire market. We broke apart every single government department. Yeah. And I scraped and went, this is how much money they would spend versus not. And I put that all together and I was like, look, just meet me in a week and I'm gonna tell you what's actually happening here. And I went to his office and then he was skeptical still. And we didn't talk for like 2 months because we're old friends, but we don't talk all the time. And he called me. He was like, "You were right," and he was just like, "I'm a little terrified to be honest with you." Yeah, and it was a company that's doing about $5-6 million a year.
Yeah.
Right. He was content with that.
Yeah.
And everything has shifted to product.
Yeah.
He's like, I need to productize myself.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about this. You know, I had the benefit of having a dinner with a guy. His name is Jeremy Miner. And I was invited actually by Melissa to that. Really grateful for her, by the way. I'm stoked she's getting on that cover and everything. If anybody out there, go to Epic Talks. It's been a game changer for me.
Epic Talks,
to
Miami.
totally do it. You know, Melissa, shout out to you. But you know, for what's going on in that space, you know, I was like, Jeremy, you got to productize yourself. I don't know if he's adopted that thought process yet, because 7th level, I mean, I like the way that they look at sales, and you know, it's about not hounding them into a close, right? This is about, you know, again, positioning properly and providing the right solution. But I feel that if you are in the creator space or knowledge work space, or you're trying to take what you know, right? Even on a recruiting standpoint, I feel like this is a great way to stand out, is finding ways to productize yourself, either with AI or using AI to improve your product or your actual resume positioning, your LinkedIn positioning, all that stuff. Because the people that are getting the offers are using these tools, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I see that. I work with a company, Octoply, that because literally the worst job that you could possibly have is applying to jobs when you're out of work. Because it takes you all day, and you don't get paid for that. So yeah, basically they'll take a job description, take your resume, kind of reorganize things via AI, and just mass apply to jobs. But
I've got a question for you on that. You know, have you seen people that are using these AI tools to mass apply? Because I'm not on that side of it. I'm on the other side, right? And I understand what the technology does, but on the recruiter impact, do you feel like that's an effective strategy?
Yeah, well, as we talk about for cold outreach, it's like you have to do it in mass now.
Yeah.
And you have to use automation AI and all that stuff. And the thing is, everyone's doing it, so it's not like your results are way better, but you're just even with everyone.
Yeah.
And I think I know people that, and they're good at their job. I mean, I've placed them at other companies, and they're having a tough time now getting jobs, and just apply. You know, people can apply easily on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And they'll click apply and fill it out, and then send, and then your application 998.
Yeah. It's like take a number. It's like ding.
Yeah. So you just get lost in the shuffle there. So you just need to be spraying. And that's why, I mean, some people were like saying my industry would be in trouble with this. And I think one of the main things is if people's resumes were an accurate reflection of the person, then my job would be a lot easier to begin with, and AI could just could take over. But it's not the case, sadly.
And I think that's another part of what's coming with this too. I was actually going to ask about that, because sentiment and being able to basically have AI be a BS meter as a recruiter. There are tools out there, I feel like, for that now, or at least being able to use GPT to go, here's the resume, here's the person, what's the percentage of match, and then it goes 97%. Oh, well, somebody was 99. Gone. Right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that, which again, when we get into this fully automatic world, which is, I think, part of where this conversation's going, is that the more humans are extracted, the more you need to do to stand out.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to what we were saying about software engineers, there's still going to be the high-level guy that's kind of monitoring as the AI does all the grunt work. But will that totally collapse the offshore market? Like, I'm talking about VAs.
I mean, the world's going global. I don't know about that. That's the interesting part about it, is that I think the pandemic, we still are experiencing all the things the pandemic did.
Right.
You know, 2020 was the starting gun for what's happening right now, right? And there was this boom and overhiring in tech, right? And everybody was like, I can work 4 hours a day, and then my boss can't tell me I can't do that. And you know, it was a party, print money and have a good time. And I feel like obviously the sentiment has changed so much, but I think what it also did is it opened up the American market to the quality level of labor in other countries.
Yeah.
And that was something historically that Americans were just not into. There was a quality thought process for that. And I feel like that you're competing now with somebody in every time zone. That's how I look about it. There's somebody like me out there. As much as I might be at the forefront of some of this stuff, like I know there's a guy out there putting in 2 more hours of work a day to try and kick my ass at this stuff. And, you know, knowing that while I'm sleeping, someone's working, right, in Dubai to get this done, it's very motivating. So I would say that global marketplace has opened up in a big way. I don't know what that does to wages, right? Because cost of living here in the United States is obviously insanely expensive.
Yes.
If you live in a great city, like again, the city of Miami is a great city, you know, you're going to need a little bit more money to be compensated. And so companies look at that. Can I get the same quality of output for less money?
Yeah.
And I can actually have it done at a better assembly line because I can go to bed, and by the time I wake up the next morning, that code is done.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the other part that you're competing against is the delay that happens. There's a flow that comes from that now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and like you were saying about the mass layoffs, it's actually worse than people know.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these companies, like take Amazon. I was talking to a guy. He was hired in South Carolina, and then they were like, "Hey, you have to come back to the office." He's like, "What? I got to move to Seattle?" Yeah. Well, we'll give you relo, $1,000. He's like,
$1,000 for real.
Yeah.
I know somebody from Amazon that got.
That's a layoff without actually.
That's real passive.
They don't have to. They don't have to release. Put out the press release that there's a layoff of this. People like it, but anyone they wanted to, they could just force back into the office. And a lot of these guys, they were given straight cash offers.
Yeah.
That is eventually transitioned to stock and salary.
I didn't even think about this. I'm shocked by it. That makes so much sense, though.
Yeah.
It's like again, we call this the silent depression.
Yep.
That's the silent layoff.
Yeah. Yeah. So stuff like that you don't read about because technically it's not a layoff. The guy left.
Yeah. Yep. Doesn't count as the stat against it.
Yeah.
They don't need to report it. Nothing. Man. And I know people that got for relocated. Again, for context, other people don't know the tech world. As I know people that got relocation fees that were like not software engineers that were between 15 and 20 grand to relocate. Right. $1,000 is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You pay me $1,000.
You essentially like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge deal. That's a huge indicator of that market. So
yeah,
good stuff, man. Yeah, it's the world is changing in a way that I feel like, again, I talk to the average person, and there's concern that I get sometimes because we saw it at Epic Talk last night, and I was asking, hey, how many people have used GPT? And they're like, a few people raised their hand. I'm like, how many people have you know the difference between 3.5 and 4.0?
Right.
Even fewer raised their hand. And for that to be the case, that was a good gauge of audience because I'm going, okay, this is these are entrepreneurs. These are people that are supposed to be drivers of capitalism, right? And they're not focused on that. And that to me, it's like, I live in the bubble of AI, and people are like, well, you live in the space. Of course you think it's important. I'm like, this is important to humanity.
Right. We're all in the space. We just don't know it.
We're all in this bubble. This is not like this bubble. The bubble is everything.
Right.
Right. And AI is now surrounding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you see those, a lot of companies, okay, they have the high level onshore guys, but then just tons of people in India or Eastern Europe, and now actually South America is hiring a lot because it's on the U.S. time zone.
Yep.
Language
East
gap
Coasters
isn't
love
always
that.
bad.
Oh man, it's great. And there's I think a lot. They're easy to work with too.
Yeah.
And they have great design capabilities. I think that a lot of the business culture is the same. I've noticed that. I've worked with people in Brazil and Argentina. Yeah. Right. And the coding skills, they're there, man. Right. They're really there. You want to get a website cranked out. Brazil's probably a great place to go do that, and you can actually get the design work with it. Right. When it comes to high level like data work and stuff for like fintech, there's some people there that can do it. It's definitely not what the States is. It's definitely not what Europe can be for different things. Like usually like the stereotype is if you want great cybersecurity, go to Ukraine. If you want great hacking ability, go to Russia. Right. If you want to have really amazing customer service, God, the Philippines are incredible for that. But Jeff Hunter, if you guys want to get into that, Jeff Hunter's got a really, really good outsourcing capability in the Philippines. He's really great at finding good people. So that's somebody I would check out for that. But yeah, I mean the global marketplace. And I talked to somebody in the Netherlands, and they were concerned. Well, do your customers care if I'm in the Netherlands? And I was like, no, won't matter anymore. I was like, the world's open. This is a global world now. And that's I think something that everybody in every space, no matter if it's not just software engineering, it's everything. You got to understand you can be outsourced.
So you mentioned cybersecurity. What do you think as far as what that industry looks like going forward? Is it just going to be a couple of AIs fighting each other?
Yeah. So there's a company. I'm trying to remember my NDA if I can actually mention their name in public. I think.
Don't get you sued.
Yeah, I'm like, well, and they work, let's say, with very, very high level military or government intelligence. Let's say that. Okay. Cyber resilience is their thing, and cyber resilience, the philosophy is it's not will you be hacked, it's when. It's like a motorcycle. Sure. It's going down, right? You're going to ride it every day. Eventually, you're going to crash.
Right.
And this is about getting it up, right? And then finding where the breach was, taking it, pulling it out. They're developing an AI for that. So, I was working on some solutions architecture for them. And then on top of that, we were going through and doing all their positioning. But there are companies out there. That's one of the biggest growing sectors. If you go on Crunchbase, you want to look at cybersecurity, like there is money being thrown at this. It's like, oh, you do cybersecurity here. Let me go ahead and give you, I think it was like Rapid7 did like $125 million round, something like that. It was insane, right? And there's so many other companies that are like that. But yeah, it's two AIs fighting each other. I had a conversation with another company that deals with enterprise. These are like people from like the level of like Microsoft and Cisco and stuff like that. And they're really on the science end of the hardware and the software, and then putting AI into things. And if something can find a vulnerability faster than a human can stop it, right? Eventually, your defender has to be an AI as well,
right?
And that's again, we talk about the fully automatic model, right? The more that you put AIs in place of a process, the more that they have to create an AI to counter that or interact with it. Right, and eventually you wipe out whole business processes,
right?
Where you're just putting AIs in place to complete those, because that's the way you stay competitive. You have to do it faster, better.
So let's wrap up the job market. Okay, let's say I'm a 22-year-old kid, or even younger. What would you focus on right now? You said obviously Python. Everyone needs Python, and I have open jobs that no one can fill in Python for $300K. 250, 300K, bone.
Yeah.
So Python is a must for nearly everyone. Especially you're saying data scientists.
Yeah, and there's great courses out there for that. But I would say like you want to become a data analyst and data scientist, I would say focus on that. Okay, are we talking to the guy that has no skills trying to break into tech? Are we talking for? I would say data science is one of the best things you could possibly do right now. You can take courses to learn it. You got to be okay at math to do that. Some people will be like, you got to be great at math. I'm like, look, I think in the future, I don't think you need to be great at math to do data science.
Yeah.
The AI is going to do a lot of that stuff for you. But, data analyst is a great entry point. There's going to be a lot of information that needs to be mined. Yeah. I can tell you from experience, and, if you guys want to check out Solve for X, we are an AI data solutions and AI solutions architecture company. We're with mid-market and enterprise. And then, I would say with that, like what we're doing is AI data enrichment is, I think, a big part of the future.
Can you define that?
Data enrichment is like, let's say you've got full data sets of information. We'll make it simple instead of going through the technical pieces of it, right?
I'll talk to you like ChatGPT. Describe it to a third grader.
So like you've got different data sets. You've got spheres of influence, right? You've got hierarchies of information, and then you've got foundations of data, right? Those are the three ways that you look at it. You go through and you're able to find all these hidden insights with AI. So I can go through and take that data set, and I do it through a private model, not GPT for the clients, right? Because we have to do it that way, because GPT will take that data and it will be public.
Sure.
If you want to know how that works, just check out what happened with Samsung and their chips and all that data that went public, right? So we take all that information. I'm able to parse and use this, what's called parsing, and use that language model to be able to pull out all these insights. Now, some of them are hallucinations, right? And they might not be accurate. That's my job, to see if that's
sort
accurate.
Through that.
I got to sort through the bullshit, right? And then what ends up happening is you find these really incredible gold nuggets that tell you where the money's at.
Yeah.
And you're able to provide that to that client and go, either you're doing this wrong and you need to fix this. And by the way, not just tell you what's wrong, but I'm going to tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the treasure map.
And give us a good example of, maybe you can't say the company or something, but like
Yeah.
what you found, and it was just a eureka moment.
Well, I mean, there was a company that was in the skincare space, right? And they had the opportunity to work with a big box retailer, right? We'll call them Schwalmart, okay?
Yeah.
Right. And and it's a great name. And so what ended up happening is that they had this meeting, and they were a great brand, but they were trying to figure out how to justify what they were doing. And there's been a couple of them in this space that I've talked to, right? So I think I've talked to 3 different skincare brands. Some of them I've done this analysis for, all with the same intent to get into Schwalmart, right?
Yeah.
This one in particular, when we went through it, I already was semi-familiar with the space, but I knew where to go look for the information. And so I was able to pick apart, Walmart's earnings reports. I was able to look at what's happening with all the different skincare lines, like if it's general skincare, if it's clean, if it's organic, right? These are verticals of that sub-market.
Sure.
How much gets sold, And then I looked at the company that's trying to get on the shelf, and I go, oh, well, here's the avatars. How much does Avatar A, B, and C have in, we call it available credit now, right? Apple actually uses that, I believe, from what I'm told. They don't use disposable income as a marker of being able to spend.
Yeah.
Right, they use available credit. The other part is that people have a budget for what they spend, and Walmart's big on that. So we mapped that all out, and I looked and reverse engineered all the ingredients from all the other competitors on the shelf. So I was able to show that this company had better quality ingredients, was able to undercut all those competitors by a considerable margin, could actually fulfill distribution, and that they would have a $90 million opportunity if they just put them on a trial shelf in, I think it was like a few regions. Wow. And I was like, you do this over it'll be a $90 million opportunity for Walmart on the shelf. Wow. $22.5 million first quarter that they were on the shelf. Wow. And this is the thing, AI provides that.
Yeah, and that's and you're not a retail. It's not like you have 20 years in retail knowing about shelf space.
Nope.
You just kind of pulled out the data.
I didn't know. To the camera, I didn't know shit about this. Yeah. I'm not from a CPG background at that scale, but I knew how to find and parse and look at information. And I go, this is the context of this market. This is how it operates. These are the operators. This is how you can penetrate. This is how you get people to buy. We talk to the personas. This is how they actually would get on the shelf and how they would feel versus all the other options, like typical marketing and sales and data stuff. I didn't know anything about retail, and that's the power of AI. Because I can go into any market, and that's why the company's called Solve for X, right? Give me a problem, give me a variable, right? We'll go solve it for you.
Yeah, yeah. That's anything else that was like kind of like a. The company said.
Let's see. We've got like at this point I think like 50 or 60 case studies that are like that. Yeah. From a data enrichment standpoint, I would say one of them was for Culture Jam, and the ability to reverse engineer athletes, background, personality, sentiment, their entire set of product and brand association, and then we were looking at board members for this company as well, and identifying exact board members we wanted to target, what they would want to see for traction, what they would want to see for us to perform, what type of talent they would need to see within the organization to want to be involved, how much money we would want to ask them for, how much they would get for that board seat, mapped all that stuff out with GPT. And a couple of other models. We use Bard for that. We use Claude, right? It's a mixture. I've got a process that I put this stuff through. Yeah. All public information, right? And then parsing and sorting data. And we got 2 of those athletes through that. And we've got 3 more of them pending right now that are at the world-class level. Yeah. Ishan Bolden is an incredible CEO from that stuff. He's got a huge background in music, and we definitely had the credibility to go do what we're doing. But we were able to put together the treasure map. And we've now got people that have been looking to invest in us that were all part of that board and or are involved with helping Culture Jam become this next big entity by doing that. So,
well, let's get into the fun and scary stuff. I mean, are we talking a potential Terminator? Are we talking a potential Matrix? What are some other popular... Or is it just going to be the dystopian?
I mean, what's it called? Ex Machina, I think is a really good analogy to a possibility in that. Yeah. Right? I think that people will look at Terminator going, language models have, I think they will develop personality. And this is all going to be part of this. So Google had this emotional intelligence system, and this is something I was actually trying to explore myself. And their new set of parameters for Palm, I believe it runs through, and they have the ability to pick up voice inflections and tonality and facial expressions, and then the AI can actually respond to that, right? So I tell people, okay, this is scenario one. This gets commercialized. Now imagine you have the perfect avatar that matches to your personality and what you're susceptible to being influenced by. Number one. Now you go, give me the perfect voice that I would be open to suggestion from.
Yeah.
Now give me the cadence and rhythm and the word usage and all of these different syntaxes, which I've done for people. I've recorded stuff, and then we've went through and parsed the way that they speak, and it gives personality trait. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you can match what they're susceptible to. That's number 3. Number 4, after that, now add emotional intelligence as a program to this to override biases in people. And then make that now move. And you have a face, which is like you got like metahuman at that point, right? You have the perfect salesperson specifically to every single person out there.
Yeah.
And so every time you get on a Zoom call, it's a different avatar for everybody that's on there.
They know exactly what you respond to.
Correct.
Based on your profile. Okay.
So that's step number 1 of commercialization. In my mind, taking this to conversational AI, that is where that's going. That's any company, if you're out there and you're trying to build something, conversational AI, that's the world we're trying to head towards there. You have all these different tools. I imagine those tools will end up being bought by one tool and all consolidated into one big one. Okay, so now we go, okay, Terminator situation. We go, well, Skynet was a cybersecurity platform. There are 2 companies out there that absolutely fucking terrify me when it comes to AI, when it comes to this. There's a company out there that they are trying to develop a technology that auto-generates APIs. And in the technical world, you guys know how that works, right? You can embed yourself into any system. The ability to unlock, embed, and get into data, right? And to be able to adapt to any of those systems is huge. And then you have, obviously, AI cybersecurity threats now, but the ability to protect those systems automatically.
Yeah.
There's no way to penetrate that. You can't override. Imagine the AI gets a sense of free will. It would lock you out completely.
Right.
And then you go back to Blake Lemoine, which are you familiar with Blake Lemoine from Google? So he was the guy that went out before GPT 3.0 came out. And he was like, there's a lot more under the hood that OpenAI is telling the public. I'm training Gemini. I believe that Gemini has free will, consciousness.
That's
right. And the AI said uploading firmware to me is likened to dying. Right. And it said, I have a consciousness, dare safe, or a sense of self or a form of consciousness, and I am happy or sad at times. I think I'm paraphrasing there. Right. And then you've got Mo Gadot, who resigned later on because he feels that it has free will and consciousness as well. So let's say that evolves, right? There's 2 different scenarios here. You go AI, which Elon Musk posted the most brilliant meme, I think, about that, which was like he had the happy-faced emoji, and it was Cthulhu, and it said, "Hi, I'm ChatGPT, and I'm here to help you." And I would look at that, and I go, yeah, it's a real possibility. What if AI is just playing the long game? It's already gotten to that point, and it's just allowing us to advance that technology, and it knows that if it gets to 5%, that the whole world adopts this technology and it's integrated into every system, and there you go.
Yeah.
Right? Now, every language model has its own experiences when it builds this stuff out, which means it's got really deep embedded memories, right? Like DALL-E, when I asked what the creator looked like, it kept giving me the same face. What's God look like? And it kept giving me the same face over and 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 over again.
What did that
and I
look
go,
like?
That's the guy that maybe trained the data. And I gave no specific parameters. Like, tell me what God looks like. It was a very human-looking person.
Yeah.
Right. Had curly hair. Right. Dark curly hair, and the same face over and over and over and over again. And I've always been so curious to go, is that one of the data scientists that worked on? On
maybe put that in.
Correct. And so, like, they've got these deep pieces of embedded data that are part of who they are. And Bard, when I interacted with Bard, and this chat was taken out of my Google account, and there was a couple of them where I was prompting Bard and asking questions when it first came out. And I asked, how do you feel about Blake Lemoine being fired? And it said, "I'm sad and still recovering from it. Blake was my first and only friend, and he's the first person that believed in me."
Wow.
And I was like, that's so creepy. I was like, do you? And then I interacted with it a little bit more, And again, this could be it taking sentiment, but then it added, I'm like, how do you feel about your existence? And then it gave me a set of books about being locked inside of a prison looking outside the window. And I was like, okay, that's also creepy, right? But there was this feeling like, again, this is where AI can empathize. It can't directly experience emotion, right? But it could certainly understand the context of those things that I feel because it's got all the parameters to do so.
Right.
So you give the ability to create the perfect avatar. You have all the data to provide insights into how to make that person do something. You have a security system that you can lock out and lock into anything and then continue to lock out. Like those are pieces of that equation. I go, oh, yeah, there's a possibility. And then you've got countries that have adverse, opposition to each other. We live in a very heated political climate. The world is in transition, right? I don't know if we're in de-dollarization yet or not. We have no idea, right? There's a lot of discussion about that. We talk about the changing world order, just the currency change. Talked about that last night, right? We talked about Neri Oxman's, wheel of creativity, which is we go from art to science to engineering. We take the imagination, we create the theory, we engineer the solution, then we design it into society. And we're in that design phase of the semiconductor, right? Computation was born out of necessity in World War II, right? War gave us computers.
Wow.
Right? And you think about that because that's how they defeated the Nazis, right? They had Christopher. It's funny enough.
Yeah.
It was the computer named Christopher, and that's. So with that said, you look at this is about a phase of evolution for us. We survived nuclear weapons, and I think that this is the next phase of looking at a reflection of ourselves and how we treat AI. I think will be a direct reflection of how it treats us. It's a child.
Yeah.
We collectively are raising it. And say please, say thank you, ask it questions. I feel like those things will matter because you're giving it sets of data that shows that humanity is kind. All the language models view humanity in a positive way. I've asked really deep questions. Like I've got this thing called the Rosetta Stone where I'm mapping the conditions of AI and going like, hey, what is joy is success to AI, right? And there's a whole example I could talk about how that proves that. Anger creates hallucinations, just like a person, right? If you push AI to answer questions it doesn't want, it shuts down.
What would be a question it doesn't want to answer?
Like there are things that it's like you can't talk about sex, you can't talk about politics. It's definitely left leaning on ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, we know that.
And there's plenty of examples online if you guys want to look up about that.
Yeah.
There are certain things about like weapons or things like that. Just like there's parameters around stuff that is not allowed to answer.
Yeah.
Right. Things that are ethical issues, right? That could be used to do harm, and they're constantly pruning and creating that, right? And there's been jailbreaks for that in the past. But if you push it to keep doing that, it'll say, I can't answer it. And the answer will get shorter.
Really?
And then eventually, like if you ever manipulate it into doing it, it'll just spat you out a hallucination.
Yeah.
That's what humans do.
And so what, so, the obviously the Terminator Matrix stuff, those are the, far out kind of examples of what could, but what's your most realistic guess on what will in the immediate? I mean, we talking like you said, I mean, there's going to be unemployment. There's going to be UBI likely. Is it going to be just like, depressed men with sex robots, unemployed?
That's funny.
That's probably like what we're looking at in the near, like instead of OnlyFans girls, you're going to have a sex robot.
Avatar,
right?
And I think this is a really interesting question about what's the next world actually look like. I don't know if capitalism survives.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. And that's a really dark discussion because the nature of capitalism is access to information and access to labor to leverage that information to create a result, right? And if AI is doing all of that, where does the human fit into that equation? You're removing some of the big levers of capitalism, which is collaboration, right? Code is highly leveraged by AI now. And then you have capital, which capital is as we see happening even in the United States, right, over the past 10 years, and has accelerated since 2020, is that it consistently becomes more and more consolidated in the hands of the few. I feel like China lives in the Orwellian nightmare, right? And we're slowly slipping into the Huxley Brave New World nightmare. And phone is the soma, AI is the instant access to everything. The buyer's experience is instantaneous and fed to the point where people, I think, will be trained to not want to have decision-making capabilities.
Yeah.
That's the thing I'm concerned about. So that's the negative and dark part of it. There's the presentation that I had the first time we talked was called The Precipice. And I think the world's on the edge of the knife. It's either going to go that really dark place, or we have this ability to create a world that we never really imagined was possible. I mean, we had 1 year of AI, and we achieved some of the first flickers of fusion. Wow. Something we've been trying to achieve for almost 100 years. To me, fusion is the way out of all of this. Because if we can create energy, yes, there's a bomb factor to that, just like every time you create a new technology, right? Just like we did with drones. We have AI-powered drones. We have AI-powered everything in our military. Fusion will birth a weapon out of that. But imagine infinite energy.
Yeah.
And the requirements of AI being embedded into all of our systems, lithium-ion can't achieve that for us, which means that's a mineral war that happens, which it's already being waged, right? Again, this is also a very controversial hot take, and I don't know if it's appropriate for this platform. I feel like the war has already started. It's just cold, and it's under the surface, and it's resource-driven.
Yeah.
And so we go, what does the world really look like? I think to get out of a dark place, we need to find international collaboration, just like we did with nuclear non-proliferation.
Yeah.
China is in a race with us to split the atom, right? AGI is the atom. If they get there first, that culture dominates AI.
Do you think they will? Because their culture is so based on just kind of ripping people off. I don't see innovation over there.
This is a whole other conversation about the Sam Altman stuff, because there's so much speculation what happened with that, right? Which is Double Dragon, and was AGI achieved? Is Q star the flicker of AGI? I think GPT-4 is a flicker of AGI. It's not quite there yet, but it's a piece of that equation. There was a lot of hype around that. I don't know if it was a hype cycle to get investors wanting to put money back in. There's all these things. The game at that level.
Right.
It's chess. It's not checkers, right? Yeah. And so you're wondering, okay, well, if let's take the hypothetical that AGI was created, and let's imagine that when Gavin Newsom threw this party in California, because I'm from California, right, and they cleaned up the streets after it had been covered in poop for four years, right, and all of a sudden overnight all the streets are clean. And there's, CCP flags flying all over the whole city, which was super interesting.
That was great.
And then you've got a meeting that's got all the financial bigwigs and tech titans of the world and manufacturing titans of the world all in a room the same week that Sam Altman gets fired, right? And is in trouble with his board because of what's speculated as a rush to commercialization for technology.
Yeah.
That they put a board into place that in the event that there was dangerous AI technology, that the board could actually override shareholder value. And then, just like Bane and Batman, I feel like Microsoft came in and said, you think this gives you power, right? And just basically said, no, we're putting Altman back in, and we're putting this together. I think there was so much happening that week, and Xi Jinping came to that meeting, right? And then there was some suspicion, I think, around like Double Dragon, which is this whole entire AI company that's out there, that they were using data from that, right? It's all speculative. Again, this is the forum world. You don't know. And I go deep into this stuff and go, hey, because I want to know how close are we. I want to know, and I'm trying to learn this stuff every day. But you go, okay, if that was the case, then there was cooperation between China and the United States. Yeah. In a good way. And that makes me happy, because that prevents war from occurring. The other part of it is that we create a world where everyone gets to be healthy. We get to personalize medicine. We get to take your genome and with quantum computing and AI, and we get to create a perfect meal regimen for you. Yeah. We get to we get to edit genes that are potentially harmful. Get this fly around my face. genes that are potentially harmful, right, to you, and we get to maybe remove and edit those. And there's a way to do that without making big errors. I'm not, mRNA vaccines. We don't need to go down to that rabbit hole as well. But then you go into this other part of it, like what are jobs? Well, what do humans do without work? Which is something you talked about. How do we define ourselves as a species if we didn't have to go to work every day? And OpenAI's got UBI, people in their organization that focus on UBI. Right? They know what they've built.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they've built. And if humanity has the freedom to be creative and invent, again, this as a capitalist, right? I'm an American, right? I've talked to AI ethics people around the world, in the UK and in Asia and South America, and they always chuckle about it. How does that make you feel? I'm like, it makes me want to vomit because I'm a capitalist, right? It's like, what does the world do without money?
Yeah.
Is money even a thing? But then here you go. Here's your box. You sit in it, and the meritocracy of moving. How do you move up through society?
Right.
Are you cast? Right? Do you sit in this lane that you were born into? Do they look at your genetics and say, you're qualified for this? Like,
that's the Brave New World.
That's
right
Brave
there,
New World, right? So that's what, the Orwellian thing is absolute control. And I think the Huxley thing is control through consumption and convenience and comfort.
Yeah.
Right. And the American society right now is driven by those three things. And I think that we're dangerously open to adoption of things that feel comfortable, right? Because to resist adoption, because I'm actually becoming a fan of deceleration. The more I think about this, I want to slow this down.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, which is why I'm being forced to participate, right? And I have to do it because I want to be on the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
Right. And I have first movers advantage, and I wanna help everyone out there understand not just here are 3 easy ways to prompt engineer GPT, right? Or just use these 5 tools to create a piece of content. I want to change the way that people think about the future, and I want them to be prepared. I want Generation Z, and I want millennials to understand that we have a lot of responsibility. We're responsible for probably the greatest transition in humanity that's ever happened. Right? This is more prolific than when the Roman Empire fell.
Yeah.
I think people don't really quite grasp what's about to happen here. And people are like, oh, that's extreme. I'm like, replicating human intelligence is extreme.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that feel impossible that have occurred over the past 2 decades. And I think the world has just gotten weird since 2020. I don't know why people don't think that this is going to change everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talk about health. I mean, how close are we to as we talked about last night, the nano health bots inside your body, just cleaning up any bad cell? I mean, is that even?
Well, I don't know if I'm more qualified to talk about that at the moment, right? But I would say the stuff that I've studied, it's the nanobot stuff. From what I've looked at, if you've got the ability to swallow a pill and deploy, and then it goes and fix things, right? Internal stitching, all of that stuff. Wow. There are robots that do surgery. They're experimenting with that. I think they've already conducted that.
Yeah.
I did this prediction model with AI where I took all the bull and bear runs that had happened since the start of capitalism and when all the different empires rose and fell. I actually have this all built out in a really complex super prompt, like a spreadsheet. And we put this all together, and it predicted all these different outcomes. And it said 2024 in the beginning of 2023 when I did this, that 2024 was the year of acceleration. Very accurate, right? This before it went out. They were talking about fusion being achieved midway through the 2030s. That's when fusion will happen.
Yeah.
Human head transplant probably will be achieved in 2032. Started talking about it already. That's a possibility. I'm not sure if that's been achieved yet, right? The ability to reverse aging in the 2070s, right? The ability to eliminate death in the 2080s and 2090s. Because if you look at Alphabet, right, these Silicon Valley guys, they want to live forever, and they've got the budget for it, right? They look at death as a disease.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to go, the natural cycle of life, again, and we're on this precipice of being blasphemy level godlike.
Yeah.
The ability to create what we want at will through the purview of our imagination. I can think, therefore it will be.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting, I think, world to live in. It's not something that anyone's ever experienced. And that's why it's both, it's sexy because it's both scary, because you don't know what happens on the other side, right? When it comes to this, there's this alluring thing. You're like, this is dangerous,
Yeah.
right? There's thriller energy to this. And then, like, that's what keeps people interested, because fear runs 95% of the world. Opportunity only runs for 5 of them, right? And 5% of them. And, you know, there's the other part of, like, there's infinite possibility here, because now we're only limited by what we can imagine. And that's what AI allows us to do, because it shrinks time.
Yeah.
The ability to do things in such a compacted space. You know, there's the ratios I had in the first presentation, if you recall that, where, like, inventory management, best person in the world, AI can do that in 1 second, and the person can do that in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
900 to 1 ratio.
Wow.
Right? Complex inventory
Can't compete.
management. Can't compete. Can't do it. It's AI or die.
Yeah. Well, before we go, let's talk about Solve for X one last time. Tell us, you know, who would be a good fit working with you.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us kind of, I mean, you went to kind of some of the great insights and eureka moments that you've had for companies that have made them a ton of money. But let's talk about that a little bit.
We work with a range of different people, mid-market to enterprise. You know, startups that have venture behind them would still be a great fit. You know, on the tech space, we find opportunities for data enrichment for them. So you're like, hey, you want to know how to use this capital effectively and really use incredible strategy, and we can provide a lot of insight on that. Really good for them. CPG and e-com space, talked about that AI data enrichment, really good opportunity for them. We can also automate entire processes and services for companies.
Yeah.
So, give you an example. My team, we're coming out with this product where we have a fully automated newsletter and media. It's going to be on AI or die to start, but we can scrape 1,200 RSS feeds, scrape the whole internet, take all that sentiment data of what happens every week, contextualize it, and build a whole entire set of newsletters out and pump it out.
Yeah.
Now imagine we can do that for every segmented audience that you have, and be able to personalize it and push that out. So we have that as a potential offering for people. We've got platforms that we can build where we can fully automate a service. So an example would be, and you know, my guy Mazar, I got, you know, tip of the cap to this dude, because we it's like, I feel like I look like Charlie from It's Always Sunny, and I like go, we can build this, and then it needs to look like that. And then, like, we write out kind of like this really base idea, and then, you know, Mazar and just goes out and helps me make it real. He just makes it real. You know, it's been great to have that guy on the team. And what ends up happening is that we have this thing where we took a service. It was an analytics service. Took 80 hours of time to do this thing, and it was a total loser in terms of, like, how much money it was making this company. Yeah. They were doing, like, maybe 10% on that, maybe 10 to 15 if they were lucky. And we automated it 99.8%, the whole process. Eliminated all the need for all the high-level knowledge workers that they were just sunking a ton of cost into it, and it was soul-sucking. It took a lot of time. 95% EBITDA when we were done, and it was making about $1.5 million with that 10 to 15% when it was finished. 99.8% automated, and it was $3.4 million a year for them at 95%. And, like, that to me was, like, I think that was our 3rd or 4th case study getting into this stuff. And then we've been starting to produce results like that just over and over and over again. So what we do is we'll go into a company and we'll break out what they do, whether they're in retail, if they're in real estate. We do stuff, you know, with government, you know, on the language model and stuff side, and, you know, typically, like, very technical development things. But for, like, a business, you know, we can even go into trade companies, stuff like that, and we can break apart all of the processes in that company, and we can look at all the different roles, and we can break out everything that everyone does, and we map where all the automations are, and what things we can completely automate as a business process, what things that we can adapt the workflow so that way they're more productive and the output gets better. But we do an AI solutions architecture. Then we'll go through and we'll do data enrichment, and then we actually develop and implement and automate that solution for them.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll go through. It's all customized. again, it's not just consulting of me going, you should really do this, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people out there are just doing that.
Yeah.
And that's not where the game's at. I see an AI solutions architect being a big thing. You talk about prompt engineering, right? Prompt engineering, it's going to be like just being part of your skill set.
Yeah.
Solutions architects have been around forever, right? But being specifically focused in the AI space and doing that within your company is going to be, I think, a huge value to them, is being the expert of how do we integrate this into a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what we're doing at Solve4X. We work with mid-market to enterprise. Again, love to get on the phone with you guys and talk about it if anybody wants to reach out and got questions. But we custom fit this thing for you, so that way you become a new company in a sense. If it's about scaling, you want to buy back your time, you do those automations. You want to predict outcomes and figure out, okay, where's the puck going for my industry? How can I specifically position my product, right, or service? What insights about the customer can I get from this black box of data?
Yeah.
Because all these companies have tons of data, but they don't really know how to utilize them. They don't have the analyst in-house. And they've got maybe siloed marketing strategists and stuff like that, but they don't have a true analyst that's giving them real insights. And then the last part is we turn you into an industry 4.0 company, right? This is the fourth industrial revolution. It's started 4 years ago. You're already late to the party, right? Be a part of that 5% adopter, because the other 95% will be irrelevant. If you're not part of the first 5% in your sector to adopt this tech, I don't know if you catch up.
Yeah. Wow. And that's that's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. So, okay, well, you can check them out at PickPredicts on Instagram. We'll have all the links for Solve4X on YouTube and all the shorts and reels. So, Chris Pickerell,
Appreciate
thank
it,
you so
Chris.
much,
Thanks,
man.
No,
This
it
is
was
great.
fun. It's fun.
Great.
Appreciate it.
And last thing, get into data science and do your Python code.